Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another lecture in iOS and Swift. This one, I'm going to show you how to do local notification in your apps. So to start with, I have a simple project already built. So to save some time, in this project, you only have a one view controller with a button. This button has an IB outlet, IB action, and in the IB action, we call a function that is called send. And in this function, we can put the code. We're going to put the code to send the notification. But before we do that, we need to do some work in the view did load method. In the view did load method, we're going to request for authorization. And obviously, because we are using the notification center, so we need to import the notification framework. So that's your first step. You import your notification center or framework, and in the view did load, we're going to ask for notification. The first thing I'm going to get the local notification center, which is responsible for managing all the notification in your app. So I'm going to define a variable called center, and this variable is equal to UN user notification center, and then we're going to get the current instance of it. All right. That's the first step. And the next step we're going to do from the center, we're going to request for notification. So we're going to say center request authorization. And in the other authorization, we need to send the options, what we want. We're looking for an alert. We're looking for a badge, and we're looking for a sound. So we're going to pass all these options in an array, an alert. And we're looking for a badge, which is we get the badge on the notification, and then we're going to get, and when we receive a notification, we want to actually get authorization for the sound as well. All right, so those are my options for the notification. Now for the completion handler is that when you process this, when you get the authorization, you're either going to get true or false, or you get an error. So if we get authorization, you can do something with it. So this is we're going to define something called granted. This is the Boolean variable that was going to give us, well, whether we were granted or not, authorization or not. And for some reason, if we got an error, we need to handle that error in our code. All right, since we're not doing anything about the granted or not, you can do that in your code. We're going to check if we have an error or not. So how do we know? We know if we have an error. We say if let. We use optional unwrapping. So we say optional binding. We say if let error equal error, which means that if there is error is not null, what we're going to do, we're going to send a message print, and we're going to print that error. All right. That localized description. So that will print the error. Else, we're going to do something else later on, and I'll show you what we're going to do in that in a minute, but I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to put a comment, do something else, or handle notifications. What can you do based on your application? You can check that flag, granted, if it's true or false, and based on that, you can program your app. But for now, we're going to leave it like this, and we'll come back to it later on. So what happens now when you run your application? The first thing will happen, it'll ask you, do you want to grant authorization or not, local notification authorization to your app or not? Now I have run this before, so I might not get that, but let me run it on a different simulator, so at least we will get that notification request or authorization. And we'll wait. Let me pause recording for a minute. All right, so I resume my recording, and we're waiting. I don't think we have an error. Okay, here it is. So it says, do you want to allow notification? And this is where you give it a permission or not. Now, if you give it allow, so the next time you run your application, you don't have to worry about granting the application, granting notification unless you change it in the setting. Okay, so that part works. So let's go continue with actually sending the notification. So where is Xcode? All right, so that's how we get the authorization to your application. Again, so these are my options that I'm asking for. An alert, which is that that you get that panel, the badge, whether you have the badge that we're going to talk about a little bit later on, and then the sound. Okay, so that works. What do we need to do in the send functions? You need to create, first of all, there are a few steps that you have to do. The first thing you need to do is that you need to create your notification. All right, and we need to create the content of the notification. So I'm going to say let content equal unmutable notification content, and that will give you you can set the notification payload. I mean, you can do, for example, the title, the subtitle, the badge, and the body of your notification that you're going to send. So in here, you can say, for example, content dot set title or dot title, and then you give it the title. So if you want to say study, that's the title of the notification, and then you can put subtitles as well. Subtitle, and then here you can say equal study for your next quiz, and you can put the content body, and that's what you can put a lot more descriptions, obviously, in the content body. So you can say dot body, and then here you can have longer message if you want. Okay. And the last thing you can do with this thing is that you can set the badge, and the badge is what appears on the a small number with a red circle on top of your application. All right, on top of your app. So we're going to say content badge, and I'm going to just put 1 for now. Okay, so first notification. So that's the first thing you need to do. The first thing you need to do is that you create the content for your notification, and you set the payload for your notification. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to get the trigger, or set the trigger for my notification. And there's 3 ways to do that. You can set the notification trigger based on an elapsed time. You can set it based on a date and time. And then there is one by location. Now, the one we're going to use, we're going to use it, we're going to base it on time interval. The date and time, obviously, you need to set the date and time, but this one is a little bit more trickier because you need to send more than just date and time. You need to send more. You need to send the location that you want that notification to be triggered on. So you need to pass longitude to latitude, the coordinate of a location. All right. But for now, we're doing it for the elapsed time. So how do we set the trigger? We say let trigger equal UN time interval notification trigger, and then you pass to it 2 values, the elapsed time and the repeat. Now the elapsed time is in seconds, so I'm going to put it 10 seconds. And we're not going to repeat this notification only 1 time. We can put false. Now you could, if you like, for example, an alarm setting, if you wanted to keep sending reminders, this is one way to do that. You keep setting, you can say repeat until you stop it. You can program for that. So that's the trigger. The next thing that you need to do is that you need to get set the request, create a notification request. So here we created the payload. Here we set the trigger. Now we need to set the request. And after the request, we send it to the notification center. All right. So how do we create the request? All right, so the request, I'm going to create an ID first. Each notification has, you can set an ID for it, and that way this is how you can handle or manage these notifications by that ID. So if I'm going to say notify one, so that's the ID of the message that I'm going to send. And then I'm going to say let request equal the UN notification request. All right. All right. And then in the request, we need to pass a few things. One of them is the identifier, then the content that we're going to send, and the trigger that is going to be fired, or when is this notification will be fired, or they're going to trigger this notification. So the identifier is the ID. The notification content, we already have that. We defined it above. And then the trigger is the time trigger that we created. All right. So that's the third step. And finally, the fourth step is that you add it to the notification center. Add the request to the notification center. All right. And then we already have the notification center. We only defined it here. Okay, so I'm going to copy that here. We could have defined it at the class level, so we don't have to do that every time. But anyway, we have it here. So then I'm going to say center dot add. What are we adding? We adding the notification. All right. We adding the request. What is the request? We defined it as request. So here is going to be request. And then we need a completion handler. A completion handler to tell you that you actually did that adding the request was successful or not. So this is going to be an error. And again, if we have an error, we're going to print that error and saying, let that error, we have already the code for that. So I'm going to copy that again. So that way we inform the user if there is an error. Obviously, we're not displaying it, but at least it is in the console. So now, when we click on the button, what's going to happen, we will call this function, we'll create the payload, then we create the notification and set the payload, then we set the trigger when we want this notification to be fired or activated, then we create the request with the payload and the trigger, then we add this notification to the notification center. All right, so let's test that. If we run it, now I wanted to put that, I'm going to say send, but I'm going to put it in the background so you can see the notification, and I'll show you why I did that. So after 10 seconds, what you should see that notification here, and so that's what you got, the notification, and that's that badge. All right, so that worked. Now what happens next, if we actually have the application open, now if I click on send, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that you will not see the notification, even though it is sent. And the reason is we have to do extra step to do that. And I'll explain that in a minute. So 10 seconds passed, but no notification. So what's going on? What's happening? What we need to do an additional step. So the first thing that you need to do, you need to implement the UN notification center delegate and then the delegate. So the delegate protocol allow you to add additional, customize this notification center to your liking. So one of the things that you can do, you can allow these notifications to be present while your application is open, like in WhatsApp or whatever. So if you get a notification while you're looking at your app, you want to be still able to see the notification. So that's the first step. You need to implement the protocol user notification delegate. All right, so that's not the only thing that we need to do. There's a couple more things. The next thing that you need to do, remember in the view did load method, we said that you need to add, there is a piece that I said I will explain, do something else here. This is that part. So if the authorization, if I got the authorization, I want to set the delegate for the center to be this class. So anything that is being sent from the delegate, it actually can be handled in this class. Okay, and we haven't talked about delegates, but in the future we'll discuss it in more detail. So what happens here? I'm going to say set center the delegate, a helper class, equal to self. So this class will handle stuff that is being sent to me from the notification center. Now, that's one step. That's first step. The next step that you need to do is that there is a part here in this code that I left it out, but if it need to be commented. Say if you want to receive notification in the foreground, we need additional steps. First, you need to the view controller need to become a delegate to the notification center. Delegate and implement necessary method will present. So this method will present, it'll actually be called when your application is open. So all I have to do, implement this method, and I already have it here. So if you don't have it, you just simply start typing user notification center, and then you want to make sure that will present method is the one that is implemented. And then you just say completion handler with a banner and a sound. So I want to get that notification, the banner and the sound. Now, if you're using an older Xcode, you can use an alert instead of a banner. All right. So now if we run this, let's see what happens. If your application is still open after 10 seconds, you will get that notification even though your application is open. And here it is. All right. So that is how we implement notifications, local notifications, and then able to view that notification in while your application is open. Now, there are a few other things that it might be useful for you. I'm just going to copy those and explain them to you because I've done this in the past, but there are a few things that you can do. And I'll explain them here. So the first thing that you can do is that sometimes you want to manage notification. And I have a function that says remove all notifications. So this notification center current, remove all pending notification. This function will remove any pending notification from this app waiting to be sent to you. So this is one option. The other thing that I have is that and so if you want to remove all pending notification, you can call this method to remove all upcoming notification. You can also remove specific notifications, okay, by passing the name or the identity of those notifications. Remember when we sent a notification here, it says I set an ID for that notification. So if you're keeping a list of all the notification and their IDs, and then you want to remove them, you can pass these notification to this function, which is remove pending notification request with identifier. Now I have this function that receives an array of strings, and then you just pass the array of strings to that to call the remove notification requests. Same thing with remove delivered notification. So this one, if you want to remove all the notification that is being delivered to you already, so you can call this method called remove notification. This is the center, this is the center, and this is the center notification center. So it's a short lecture, but that's all we need for this at this level for this class to talk about notifications. All right. If you want to dive more, you can explore it on your own. Maybe in the future, I'll do more videos on this. All right. We're done for today. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.